Yes, people, welcome back to the Knots Cave. Today we're going to take a look at one of the worst games on the Sega Saturn, and only because our friend Doom is being fixed, people. Yes, Doom was released on the Saturn all the way back in 1996, a good year after it arrived on the PlayStation and other formats, and Saturn owners were absolutely desperate to get their hands on a copy of Doom. The sad truth was that when we got Doom, especially myself, and I took it home and I put it in my Sega Saturn, and I played the first level, I was absolutely speechless at how bad the game was. The biggest disappointment was the fact that the game looked absolutely nothing like the screenshots in both Sega Saturn magazine and CVG at the time, and even on the back of the box, the 3 screenshots that were used in the PAL version of the packaging are all from the PC, and they're all high resolution shots. So the box was made to fool you into buying the game. I'm pretty sure this was one of those that came out before the review embargo was lifted, so people actually bought it. And I do remember going into my local second-hand game shop when I was younger, and within days of this being released, seeing about 15 copies of it second-hand on the shelf. We were all disappointed, and we were all trying to get a PlayStation or a PC so we could play a decent version of Doom. Luckily at the time I had the Atari Jaguar, and that has a very serviceable port of Doom that was ported over by id Soft themselves. So yes, I had that to fall back on. Now the blame for this doesn't entirely fall on the heads of the developers at Rage Software. In fact, talented coder Jim Bagley had Doom running on the Sega Saturn at full screen and full speed. And when this was sent off to id Soft for review, John Carmack came back to Rage Software and said he would prefer the game rendered completely in software mode and not using the Saturn's hardware due to the way that the Saturn warped its textures as they got close to the screen. So ultimately we could have had a fantastic version of Doom for the Sega Saturn, but instead it was actually handicapped by id Soft themselves. So with the limited time left to make the game, Rage Software just went with porting the PlayStation version of Doom to the Sega Saturn and getting it to run as best as they possibly could in the short time frame available. So instead we got the awful version of Doom we got for the Sega Saturn. I mean, come on, I would absolutely love to see that original game engine, how it was running, what the game looked like before it was scrapped and made to look like a carbon copy of the PC Doom, running nowhere near as well as it ran on a 486. But luckily today this story takes a turn for the better, because over on the Sega Extreme forums, where they're having a 30th anniversary homebrew competition, a user by the name of Fafling has decided to attempt to fix Doom on the Sega Saturn. So let's check out Doom 0.2.1 for the Sega Saturn and see what changes that Fafling has made to improve the gameplay. But before I show you that, I just want to remind you how bad Doom was on the Sega Saturn. Here's one of the worst offending levels, and here's one of the standard levels. You can see there's no difference. Well, hardly at all. So there you can see, if you've never played it before, just literally how bad Doom on the Sega Saturn was on its initial release. Now let's look at Fafling's version of Doom. The first thing you notice is there are high-res logos at the beginning. There's a Sega Saturn 30th anniversary logo. There's a high-res id Software logo that weren't in the original game, and that looks really nice. The following screen where the fire appears from the bottom and the Doom logo scrolls up is now much smoother and faster scrolling. The fire looks more transparent and it just looks, the whole effect looks better, and this is before we've even entered the game. The improvements are starting from the title screen onwards. The most important improvement that we have here though is an improved frame rate in the game itself. Now I'd go through how he's done this, but there's an absolute minefield of small alterations that have been made to the game in order to make this one big change. One of the things I noticed whilst playing as well is the reduced input lag really does make a difference, and the Doom guy seems to move a little bit faster, though I do notice the turning cycle is smoother when you're not holding the run button, but that's probably something to do with the way the game logic works. There's been a raft of improvements made to the game's sound too. Some of the unused death samples for the grunts have been reinserted, which is really nice. It's very interesting. A lot of the voices have been made to sound just like they did on the PlayStation and PC versions of Doom, and the rocket sound effects have been corrected as well, so they no longer sound like exploding barrels. The Doom guy's strafing speed has been increased. By default it was very slow on the Saturn. Now the default speed is about the same as holding the run key, and holding the run key makes you strafe even faster, which is a lot better for circle strafing around some of the enemies in the more open areas. That, thankfully, are now more playable, thanks to that improved frame rate. I'm going to keep going on about this because I've wanted to see Saturn Doom improved on since I first played it as a teenager and wanted to go outside, snap the disc and piss off the box. But thankfully, I don't have to do that now, thanks to fafling and all the improvements you made to this game. Hats off to you, man. I hope you make plenty more to this because the Saturn deserves a decent version of Doom. While all these little things alone sound insignificant when you put them all together, along with the improvements that have been made behind the scenes to how the game runs, Doom on the Sega Saturn has become instantly playable. And having gone through both Doom 1 and 2 in recent days myself, I can happily say that a good 80% of this game is perfectly fine to play. The odd levels like Barrels of Fun and Perfect Hatred and some of the urban levels I forget the names of later in Doom 2 do tend to chug a little still because they're wide open areas. The vast majority of the game now is really playable. So if you want to check out the game for yourself, just head over to the Sega Extreme forums and look at the Sega 30th anniversary homebrew competition for Saturn games, and in there you will find the Doom patch that you'll need. But you will also need a Japanese copy of Doom for the Sega Saturn so you can make your ISO from that, as this patch does not work with the North American or European versions of the game yet. So we're going to end this video by saying something I never thought I'd say in my lifetime. I had fun playing Doom on the Sega Saturn. Check out Fafling's patch, people. Doom on the Saturn is now really good to play. So I'm going to toddle off now and try and play this game on Nightmare. Thanks for watching, people. Take care, and we'll see you next time.